It's nice easing back into old routines. Only now, with extra care. Let's do it for ourselves, for our loved ones, for everyone's safety.
Hurry up, let's go. Let's go.
And staying safe starts at home.
Nice.
From how we work and learn, to the little ways we find joy. If you must head out, take extra care. Making a small effort, being mindful, they go a long way to keeping us all safe. The health of all depends on each one of us. So let's work together, using new tools and keeping to our new habits to protect the people we love. At work, let's all be good team players.
Hi, morning. How are you? Good.
A little distance between us today will be good for us all tomorrow. A little care can protect the one thing that means the world to us. So let's do our part.
The views and opinions expressed by the speaker, host, commentator, or other third party in ARIVA webinars, e-learning events, and/or virtual masterclass are those of the speaker, host, commentator, or third party and do not necessarily reflect and represent the views and opinions of ARIVA. Furthermore, ARIVA does not warrant, express, or imply the merchantability and fitness for a particular purpose of any product information, service, or process presented by the speaker, host, commentator, or third party, and ARIVA specifically disclaims any legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, or usefulness of any product information, service, or process presented. Finally, material or information presentation, opinion, process, or service by, on any trade name, trademark, manufacturer, or otherwise during ARIVA webinars, e-learning events, and/or virtual masterclass do not constitute or imply ARIVA's endorsement or recommendation of such opinion, process, service, item, or organization.
Good morning. Welcome to ARIVA's free live webinar, Developing Your Talent Acquisition Strategy, Innovative Talent Acquisition Strategies to Retain Top Talent. I'm Kate and I'll be with you the whole morning as your host and excited to be learning with everyone. Now, before we introduce our speaker, I have a few reminders to make sure that this webinar will run smoothly. ARIVA is committed to protecting your privacy, hence stricter security of this webinar has been implemented. So for better viewing of your Zoom experience, we encourage you to please update your Zoom application by visiting their website. And for those of you who are using their mobile gadgets, you can go to either the Google Play Store or the Apple Store so you can download and install the Zoom app. Now, I want to know who here is joining an ARIVA Academy webinar for the first time. If it's your first time, can you type hi in the chat box? Can you also put your location? Where are you watching us from? I'm here in Parañaque City and we're having a very sunny and beautiful Wednesday morning. We have a lot of participants who are from out of town. So I would like to say hi to our participants watching us from Cavite, Laguna, Rizal, Bulacan, Batangas, Quezon Province, Camarines Sur, Catanduanes, Bataan, Antique, Bacolod, Olongapo, Ormoc, Zambales, from Pampanga, from Pangasinan. We have from Ilocos Norte, from Nueva Ecija, from Lawag, from Baguio, from Benguet, from Isabela, Palawan, Puerto Galera, Puerto Princesa, from Oriental Mindoro, from Iloilo, from Negros Oriental, from Leyte, from Bohol, Cebu, from Davao, Agusan del Norte, Cabadbaran City, from Cagayan de Oro, Compostela Valley, from Dumaguete, from Misamis Oriental, from Kidapawan, Cotabato City, Coronadal, from Maguindanao, from Ozamis, and from Zamboanga City. Hello! Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, magandang umaga, Pilipinas. But aside from Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, we have participants who are viewing us and they're out of the country. They're not from the Philippines. They're from Indonesia, from Malaysia, from Singapore. We have from Myanmar, from Cambodia, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, from Jordan, from Pakistan, from United Arab Emirates, from Qatar, from Angola, from Australia, and United States. Hello, Philippines, and hello, world. Wow. Good morning, or whatever time it is there in your country. I hope you're having a beautiful day today. We're excited to start this webinar. Hello and welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. And if you have attended an ARIVA webinar in the past, welcome back. We're happy to have you here again with us. Good morning. Now, I want to do an audio check. I want to make sure that once our speaker is on screen, you will be able to hear his discussion clearly. So please type 111 here in the chat box if you can hear me clearly. You can also type 222 if you can't hear anything. 2121 if you can hear me but the sound is breaking up or I sound choppy or laggy. You can also type question mark if you don't understand what is happening and we will try to help you out. Let me check the chat box. Okay, I am seeing a lot of 111s. That's good to know. Thank you so much for that. Later, we'll have a 10-minute break by 10:30 and I'll be announcing something during that break time. Now, participants' microphones will be temporarily disabled by our administrator during the discussion to avoid interruptions. But for those of you who might have questions, we'll allot a Q&A portion at the end of our session. Now, what you can do is you can click the raise hand button, will allow you to unmute yourself and ask your question directly to our speaker. Or you can also type your questions here in the chat box and then we'll be reading them later. E-certificates of attendance will be awarded to participants who will successfully complete the entire virtual masterclass, and they will be available 3 to 5 days after the e-learning session. Now, I would like to inform everyone that we will be sending the e-certificate. Proof of your attendance is if your video is turned on. So please make sure that all throughout our session, your camera is turned on. Thank you so much for that. Please help us build and improve our service with your relevant comment and feedback. Scan this QR code that will bring you to the feedback form at the end of our session. Please fill out the form and then send it back to us. We'll greatly appreciate it. Now, it's time for me to introduce our speaker. Our speaker is a sought after certified trainer on emotional intelligence for Talent Smart, the world's leading provider of EQ assessment tools based in San Diego, California, USA. As a human resource practitioner with over 15 years of experience in human resource management and organization development, he has occupied managerial positions in several companies from different industries. At present, he's a candidate for the Certified Management Consultant Program, a premier certification recognized in more than 50 countries worldwide. He's also the ambassador of the Certified HR Professional under the umbrella of the International Federation of Professional Managers. He runs his own management consultancy services, Talent Reach, which primarily caters to small and medium enterprises. He is the past president of HR Food Link, an HR association in the food and quick serve restaurants industry. He's also involved with Toastmasters International as one of the active members of Makati-based Toastmasters Club. So everyone, let us welcome our speaker, Mr. Ronnie Turla.
Here we go. We gotta rock, 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 rock. Easy
Morning.
come, easy go.
Good morning, Sir
Good morning,
Ronnie.
everyone. Well, thank you. It's quite a crowd here, no? So we have about 400 plus, participants, viewers, and listeners as well. No? So I'm pretty overwhelmed and a little bit anxious, no, as I start the program for today. Yeah. So thank you, Kate, for that introduction, and of course, thank you, Ariva, for again inviting me as one of as your speaker for today's session. We have a very interesting topic for today, and I hope that I'll be able to meet your expectations as far as the learning and practices are concerned. So I'll be providing some information, and I hope that at the end of the session you will find it useful and practical, as that is really my style of delivering webinars. Yeah. So for today, no, so we are talking about developing the talent acquisition strategy. Ayan. Okay, I think I'm seeing some people who are chatting, so some people here, probably I know, I've probably encountered them in programs, so welcome to everyone. So I hope, that this will be a productive session for you. Ayan. Okay, so I think, I'm good to go. I'm ready to present, right, Kate? Am I right?
Yes, you're eager to
Okay.
listen to you.
Okay, so for today's session, as we've mentioned, we are going to talk about developing your talent acquisition strategy. Okay, so for the next 2 hours or so, we're going to look at what are the practices that we have to assess, and we're also going to look at how we can develop that strategy in our own respective companies. Okay, so let me now upload my screen as I start the session. Okay, yeah. So for today, I've summarized what are the outcomes that I'd like you to expect from today's session. There are three things that I will be touching on, particularly on the topic of talent acquisition. So after the program, you should be able to differentiate uh, the terms recruiting and talent acquisition, because a lot of times in the HR profession, we can interchange or have a confusion as to what's the difference between talent acquisition and recruiting. So it's not just a change of name or title, or there's a specific definition that we will be looking into. No? And the second thing that we will achieve, no, for today's session is for us to know how to actually create a talent acquisition strategy. No? A talent acquisition strategy is not just about the platform that we're going to use. It's not about creating a LinkedIn page or creating a very beautiful ad or something like that. No? So talent acquisition strategy goes beyond that. So that we're going to look at for today. No? And it's very important for us to also be aware that talent acquisition is part and parcel of what they call the talent management. Okay, so talent management is the umbrella where talent acquisition belongs to. No? That's why before we understand talent acquisition, we also have to understand what talent management is. No? And finally, I'm also going to cite a case study on an effective talent acquisition strategy of a very global company. And we can learn from that case study later on as we wind up our session for us to see how we can be able to practice or scale down our practices in terms of talent acquisition. No? Also, we're going to look at the difference between the good and the poor talent acquisition. No? Because when we talk about talent acquisition, sometimes some people can be mistaken that as long as I'm able to hire the person that my boss or that my hiring manager requested me to do, I'm good. No? But talent acquisition goes beyond that. No? So again, in this session, we're going to look at the difference between the two, and hopefully you will come out with a clearer understanding of what talent acquisition is. Yeah. Okay. So in the first part, we're going to look at the blueprint in your talent acquisition. So as I start my session for this morning, I would just like us to, you know, do a quick survey with regards to the problems that we have in our hiring process. Okay, so for our problems in the hiring process, here are some of the typical problems that we can encounter. And by the way, we are conducting a simple survey, so I hope you can participate with that so that we can see what are your typical problems in the hiring process. No? So let me look at some of the typical problems in the hiring process. So one could be the reliance on data submission. Okay, specifically when we're trying to get data from our candidates or our applicants. Possibly also too many applicants, or in our case locally, it could be too few. No, in this case. No? Another could be the poor candidate experience. No, in terms of the entire process. No, because nowadays, as we will see, candidates are trying to also evaluate their experience with how companies are trying to hire them. No? That's why there are also surveys done, for example, as to how the candidate was processed by the recruiter, by the recruiting staff, no, the hiring manager, etc. So it's important for us to be able to manage that. No? Unlike before, no, where I used to, years ago, when I was doing recruiting, particularly, we were not so focused so much on the candidate experience, but more so in terms of getting the results of getting the right person for the job. No, so another possible problem is the poor recruiter experience. No? So that could mean that the recruiter might not have been trained properly. Problems on certain biases, for example, could come up into the picture. One of the typical biases that affects a recruiter would be the confirmation bias. No? So a bias, for example, is a shortcut in thinking. No? So when we hire people, we tend to have a lot of biases. For example, no? I remember in my classes, we would normally discuss when we're trying to hire a person. No, marital status could be one of the typical bias, no, that could affect a possible applicant. In this case, that is something that we need to be able to ask ourselves if the marital status does affect, no, the performance. Remember, when we're trying to hire people, we're trying to predict their performance, no? And as a recruiter, our level of success is based upon whether that person that we've hired, we're able to retain them, or at the same time they become productive, and of course on the long run, no, they become stars of the company. No, when I say stars, no, then they can become eventually leaders or even contributors of the contributors to the company. No, so that those are things that we need to remember when we're trying to hire people. Another problem probably in hiring process is the aspect of transactional. No? Most of the time, we look at the hiring process, as I said, transaction. So in this case, the transactional process could affect the hiring process. No? Another typical problem that I've also observed in my own personal experience would be the reactive hiring. No? How many times have we seen, for example, that we're trying to hire a person that was due yesterday? No? So in this case, we tend to have a lot of problems with regards to the deadlines. No? So sometimes it's not just a matter of HR or the recruiting staff having the problem. It could also be on the other end, which is the hiring manager. No? So the coordination that we have, for example, could actually affect, no, our hiring process. No? So that's something for us to consider. Another could be the digital media mafia, no, gone mad. So that means that we tend to focus too much on the digital media, or sometimes we can also be unaware of what's going on with regards to our digital media. Are we prepared for it? Do we have the right messaging, the right content with regards to the digital media things? No, because one of the things that we will discover as part of talent acquisition is that branding, no, employer branding is the start, no, of talent acquisition. So talent acquisition doesn't start with the recruiting process. It starts with the branding of the organization, because nowadays applicants would want to create a concept of where they're going into, what company are they going to join, as an employee. That's the reason why, as companies, we have to create that kind of perception of what they would expect, no, or what are the things that they could actually look forward to when they join the organization. Okay. Another problem that you can see in hiring would be the disjointed data and technology. No? Meaning, if we're not familiar with technology, then it could definitely affect the way we handle, no, our processes. Of course, no, yung digital media for us is something that we're still getting used to. So we're still in the adaptation process now. So again, these are the problems that we can encounter in the hiring process. No? So that's why, again, as I mentioned, I'd like you to participate in the survey so that we can see later on what are the typical problems that you have encountered in the hiring process. So hopefully these are some of the things that you are, the list that I've posted here in the screen are things, no, that you are encountering. Now, when you look at candidates right now, candidates are attached to a company as long as they want to be, right? So an average of 7 months. Applicants are being measured against the job for the life of the job, okay? The only thing you can control as a recruiter is the time to source and the present time. No? Now, companies have achieved the talent tipping point. Now, here's an example just to illustrate to you an example of a poor talent acquisition. Okay, so let me cite it for you. An HR manager identifies several talented people on LinkedIn search. He then goes on to full recruiting mode. Repeatedly, he urges them to apply for an open position. Every day, he reaches out on LinkedIn or by email. He managed to get one lead's number and is asked not to call during work hours. Okay? So what does that tell us? Okay? So this is an example of a poor talent acquisition. So has anyone in the room right now encountered such occurrence, no? For example, you've put in all the efforts to be able to send a lot of emails or invitation to your prospective applicant or candidate, but at the end of the whole process, uh, you are given uh, unfavorable response from that person or from that lead, no, that you're trying to look at, no. So again, talent acquisition requires us to have a long-term thinking, okay, which I think, no, in our current generation we tend to be very short-term, okay. Again, talent acquisition doesn't center on urgency, it centers on building relationships. Okay? So let me emphasize that. So talent acquisition doesn't center on urgency, it centers on building relationship. And I think, no, this is where the difference between recruitment and talent acquisition comes into play. Recruiting happens when you actually have a job vacancy that you're trying to fill. Let's say a hiring manager requests a person for you, and the person indicated when the person is needed. It could be probably a replacement. Somebody resigned, somebody has to be filled in, no, and the whole process works, and you're able to fill in. So what happens is in recruitment, no, what you're after is efficiency. Okay? In talent acquisition, what you're after is to build what we call a talent pipeline. Okay? So a talent pipeline means that you have a pool of people that in the near future, depending on the company's plans and strategies, can actually tap in to that pool of talented people who can actually deliver for the organization on the long term. Okay, so that is the main difference. So again, recruiting and talent acquisition are two different things that we're talking about. Now, here's an example of good talent acquisition. Here's the scenario. An HR manager meets several accomplished people during a convention. No, she spends time chatting one-on-one with each of them over coffee or drinks. They have a good conversation about career goals and the future of the industry. Her company isn't ready to hire yet, and the talent may not be ready to make that leap. No? But what she does, she sends them interesting articles about topics they discuss now and then. She always adds a personal note as well. Okay, so you can be more personal to that particular person that you've met, probably in a convention, an online conference, etc., a networking event, for example. So these are things that we can join, no, so that we can build our talent acquisition. No? Now, 2 months later, as a result, a position opens up in the company. No? So she gives each lead a call and warmly encourages them to apply for the position. Okay, of course, she is careful not to promise anything, but she knows they each have a great chance of success. Okay, so notice the two scenarios that I've shown you, which gives you an idea of what poor talent acquisition is and what good talent acquisition. No? So I hope you can see the difference between the two approaches. Okay, so again, this approach that I've shown you in this example is telling you what good and poor talent acquisition is. No? So later on, as we go on our discussion, we will find out more how can we be able to come up with a strategy. No? Because the word strategy in HR is it's a very alien term. No? For a lot of us, we confuse strategies with a lot of things. No? So strategies can be confused with plans, with goals, no? Targets, for example. So those are different from strategies. Now, let me offer you, or let me define to you, what are the 6 phases of talent acquisition. Okay? So as we said, talent acquisition. Okay, so again, the 6 phases of talent acquisition tells us that we have branding as the starting point. Okay, then after branding, we go on sourcing our candidates. Then we go applicants applying, and then we go towards candidate screening, then the assessments and the interviewing, and then eventually ending at the hiring and onboarding. Okay? So all of these are part of what they call the talent acquisition. So again, notice the difference. Sourcing or the recruiting. Sourcing is another term for recruitment. So it is part of the talent acquisition. So the broader term where recruitment belongs to is actually under talent acquisition. Okay? Now, let's start talking about each of the phases mentioned here. So let's start with sourcing. No? Here are the top sources of hire typically that we are using right now. Okay? Of course, we start with the internal candidates. Remember, one of the ways that we can also create a talent acquisition strategy is to focus on our internal employees, meaning people who are already part of your organization. So you need to have a way of assessing the talent and capabilities of your internal employees. Why is that? Because you'd want to also consider them in cases where a certain job opening would be available for them so that you can actually also consider. No? So it has always been proven to work that, looking within, for example, the company could actually help you in terms of your talent acquisition. So don't neglect looking at your internal candidates. Okay. Second, of course, top source of hire would be social referrals. Okay. So social referrals could be using our social media, okay, and the different platforms that we have: Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, etc. So these are ways that we can source people. No? The third would be, of course, previous employees, employees who have joined you before, but for some reasons have left you. And if they have had a good experience with the organization, then you can use them as a possible source of hire. No? Number four, of course, candidates. No? So that's why during the entire process of interviewing, you may also ask for possible referrals. No? So that's the important thing. No? So it's important even if the person is still a candidate, no, you can actually ask them to provide certain referrals, no, that can actually provide you with other sources for hiring. And of course, number five top source of hire would be the new applicants. Okay, so the new applicants could be a possible source of your hiring. Okay, so that's the first thing that we have to consider. Now, when you talk about project-based hiring, which some of us might be encountering, okay, here's a hiring funnel that we can try to follow. Okay, so first, we start with the hiring manager introducing the requisition. Okay. Then, after that, the recruiter agrees on the job description and then sets the deadline. So, again, it's very important for us that the recruiter has a good understanding of the job description. And, of course, the part of making sure that we're efficient is to set the deadline as to how we're supposed to hire. No? And then, after that, the sourcer will identify potential applicants. And after that, the recruiter will now screen, no, the list of applicants that you have. After that, the hiring manager selects the shortlisted candidates. No? And then after which, the recruitment admin will now coordinate interviews. No? Hiring manager, on the other hand, will conduct a final interview and eventually provide or extend a job offer. No? And from there, HR coordinates the offer letter and, of course, provides the onboarding detail. Okay? So this is a typical hiring funnel that you can follow as part of your talent acquisition. Okay? So this seems to be a logical process, and it's important for us, especially in the aspect of talent acquisition, that we put in certain timeline for each steps, no, that is mentioned here. So we need to be able to put certain timeline for every step that is mentioned here. No? So that will enable us to become more efficient so that we can be able to see how much time does it require us to actually finish the entire hiring funnel. Okay? Now, for project-based hiring, the dynamics of hiring could be the same as managing a project. You know, probably some of you are managing projects that you would require some people to be hired. No? Now, the stakeholders for project-based hiring includes the recruiter, no, the hiring manager, the applicant, and the candidate. No? So it's important also for us to take note of the stakeholders. So when we say stakeholders, these are people or communities, for example, that actually relies upon your recruiting process. No? So of course, the tasks that are part of the project-based hiring could include the following: no? Sourcing, applying, no? Assessing people, doing background checks. Of course, never forget to do background checks. That's part of a diligent process of hiring people. So scheduling them, screening, shortlisting people, interviewing, probably delivering feedback to them, probably offering or declining certain applicants, and then eventually onboarding. Okay, so what are the resources that you would be needing? Of course, using tests and assessments would be a very good resource that you can have. Of course, the interview media, template communications. You might have a template email for the processes that you have, no? Or if the process would be online, you'll have to guide the participants by giving them certain instructions or notes, no? And of course, you have to put in the timeline diary and stakeholders diaries. Okay. Now, what are some of the checklists for getting started as part of the sourcing? No? So, of course, the um, the hiring manager must own the process. No? So, the difference nowadays is that it is not just about HR or the talent acquisition team being the lead, no, in the hiring process. The hiring manager should actually be owning the process. No? So there should be that kind of ownership. Okay. Of course, we have the hiring or the project team as part of getting started. What are the tasks that you need to do? No? So that's one thing that I clearly remember when I was starting in HR before, that if you want something to get done, write it down, probably use a checklist of some sort so that you don't miss out on anything. So just like this, no? So you need to be able to make sure that you have the task accomplished, the deadlines are also set here. You also, if you need to set certain service level agreements or SLAs for different recruiting requirements, so you need to be able to use that. No? So you also need to have a visible data flow as to the kind of information that you need, no? Particularly for your organization. No? Also, in terms of getting started, it has to be applicant driven, and there has to be some kind of automated admin and screening process. So it would definitely help if there's a technology that you're using to make sure, no, that the process also goes seamless, no, that doesn't require a lot of manual processing. No? So nowadays, there are technologies available for the recruiter so that you can focus on making sure that you are efficient in the process. Now, let's talk about the different roles that is part of the entire talent acquisition phases. Okay, so let's start with the recruiter. No? So as a recruiter, um, definitely you need to have a strategic mindset. You also need to be influential in the organization. Okay, it's also important for you to also be aligned with your C-suite. When I say C-suite, these are the top persons, so the chief operations, the chief finance, etc., chief marketing. So it's important for us to always be aligned. No? So alignment with the directions of your executive team is something that is required, no, if you are the recruiter. Another aspect is the recruiter should have less responsibility from the day-to-day hiring. Okay, if you are to be responsible for talent acquisition, it might be important for you to consider that a typical recruiting process might be assigned to somebody else. No? If you are part of the talent acquisition team, there should be less responsibility for the immediate or the urgent needs, for example. Because as I've mentioned, talent acquisition requires us long-term thinking. Okay. Another role for the new recruiter is employee branding. Okay. So employee branding is again something that we need to consider as to how people or applicants perceive us as a company. So using social media, using feedback and surveys, you can actually use that. No? Also, another role for the super recruiter would be leverage technology to automate administrative tasks. No? Nowadays, there's a lot of technologies and apps, no, that we can use so that we can make things faster. No? And any administrative task can be done and can have some automation of some sort for the company. So, make sure that you leverage the technology. And finally, another role or another part of the super recruiter is the global focus. Okay? When I say global focus, we cannot just confine ourselves to looking at talent, not just from the local setting, but also looking at a global focus, meaning the entire universe as a potential part of our talent acquisition. Also, when I say global focus, that would mean that we need to learn on how other organizations are doing, no? Or what are some of the best practices that they are doing and that we can adapt. Now, for the sourcer or the candidate manager, we need to be able to focus on the candidates versus the applicants as part of the role of the talent acquisition. Okay. Another is, of course, your candidate attraction. Okay. What are your brand advocacies, no? And what are referral networks that you can tap into? Okay. Because if you would want to attract certain candidates, no, there are certain things that you'd really have to put in your employer branding. No? Also, you need to look at your internal sourcing and mobility. No? You need to check the turnover of people coming in or leaving your organization. Okay? So, you might want to also include your workforce planning in this case. No? And candidate sourcing could be done via talent mapping. No? So, later on, we'll be looking at how we can do the talent mapping as well, as an example. And of course, managing jobs from deployment to completion. So that's an important aspect, especially for the source or the candidate manager. Communication, with candidates is also a role that the candidate manager would be doing. And of course, the maintenance of the talent community, including advocates and referrers. So it's important for us in the talent acquisition to have somehow a steady source of advocates and also referral networks. Okay, so that is something that we need to establish as part of our talent acquisition. Now, of course, the recruitment administrator is the one who coordinates and schedules interviews, who does data entry and other administrative tasks, and of course, supports the recruiter and the sourcer. Okay, so this is a role that you can assign as part of your talent acquisition strategy. Now, let's talk about the changing role of the hiring manager at this point. No? Now, the hiring manager's role is highlighted here to talk about, on the other side of the fence, what would be the role of the hiring manager in the talent acquisition process, no? Or the phases that we have talked about earlier. Okay, so number one, the hiring manager has to be responsible for their own hires. Okay, they have to be accountable also for the hires that they make. No, it couldn't be that if turnover will happen for certain candidates, no, the blame should not be focused solely on HR, but the hiring manager should also be held accountable for it. No? And the hiring manager's role also has to have some aspect of measurement. No? The time to hire, the retention, for example. So all of these things are put into place. No? So there has to be some kind of measurement. Okay? Also, they have to be responsible for giving timely feedback. No? So feedback should always be part of the entire process, no, the talent acquisition, no, and hiring managers also need to be the one evaluating, no, for the candidate experience. Ayan. So the hiring manager's role is very important in the talent acquisition process because this is where the candidate, for example, will encounter the possible hiring manager or the manager is going to work for them. No? So one of the things that you also expect for the hiring manager is to have them trained on how to properly interview. Okay, so nowadays, hiring managers need to be equipped, no, with how to use the interview so that you can predict a possible talent from the applicants that are applying for you. No? So, and to be honest, no, in my case, since I am a full-time consultant, no, I am tapped for some organizations to actually train managers, supervisors to actually on how to interview properly. No, because somehow some of the managers or even supervisors who are already in the company don't have, no, the proper skill set on how to properly interview. Probably they still have the old mindset, no, of how to spot talent from the applicants that they have. That's why training them would actually be beneficial, no, for your hiring manager. No? And of course, pay for the talent acquisitions time is the hiring manager's role. So make sure that you maximize the time that you allocate for the talent acquisition process. Now, what is the technology that you'll be needing, no, for the talent acquisition? Okay, so for technology, no, consider a technology that is visible to all stakeholders. No, so it would be good for you to use a technology that everyone in the entire talent acquisition process is aware of what is happening, no, to the candidate. No, so there should be a real time tracking of what is happening in the recruiting process. No, that could include an HR system, a performance management, etc. Okay. Another technology that you can use for talent acquisition is video interviewing and other selection or assessment tools. No? So you might want to consider making sure that your video interviewing is included, no, in your recruiting process. Okay. Also, you might want to look at the hiring funnel that I've shown you a while ago. So you might want to consider creating your own hiring funnel. No? And of course, don't forget the feedback and the analytics at every stage. No? So when you're trying to hire people. So these are technology aspects that you can consider with regards to your talent acquisition. So make sure that you can check your technology requirements. Now, another thing that we need to consider when it comes to the talent acquisition phases or the talent acquisition process, no, is we need to have a candidate-centric process. Okay, so what do we mean by this? No? Number one of the things that we need to remember, as I've mentioned, is that focusing on relationship. No? So candidates should be able to connect with the company and not just apply for a job. Okay. Second, we have to be real. Okay. One of the things that will affect, no, your recruiting process, for example, is a good job preview. Okay. They need to see, no, a window to your culture. Okay. Short to say, do not sugarcoat things, no? Especially nowadays because we have the social media to do it for us. But it's very important for us to stay authentic, no, to what we're supposed to offer our candidates. Okay. Another thing that we need to consider is to differentiate your process at the first touch point. Okay? So you need, as a recruiter, as a talent acquisition person, you need to differentiate your process at the first instance. Okay? So this is where the quotation, first impressions last, applies. Okay? So differentiate your process. Okay? Try to let the person know the entire process, no? Because a lot of times the typical problems for recruiting, for example, is that candidates, for example, tend not to hear, no, from companies, no, or the recruiting company after. No? So we need to again be transparent to our candidates. No? Of course, we need to provide visibility into your hiring process. Okay, so that's where the timeline, no, the metrics, for example, is present. No? So you need to let the person know where they are in the hiring process. Okay, because visibility can actually improve, no, possible people, no, really having a good onboarding process, right? So when they're visible, or when the process is visible to the applicant or the candidate, no, then it allows that person to have a good, or a great candidate experience. Also, you might want to consider a tailored correspondence and content. Okay, this is where, we put in some personalization. No? So when we communicate to a person, like through emails or through messaging, for example, we might want to consider creating a much more personalized email rather than a typical or a standard email reply to certain people. No? So we can tailor our correspondence. No? And of course, two-way communication should always be encouraged as part of the process. Okay, so two-way communication throughout. No? So there should be, that aspect of having them ask questions, you responding to the applicant, for example. No? And of course, not to forget, we can also make sure that our process is optimized for mobile. No? Why? Because of obviously we live in a environment when everyone is already using their mobile phones, no, for that experience. So again, the message that I'm trying to send here is that we need to treat our candidate and be focused on them. No? So short to say, we should be customer centric. No? So customer centric means that we focus on how we can make the experience, no, for the possible candidate to actually join our organization. Okay, so that is again focusing on what is important for the candidate centric process. Okay, so let me just check the participants. So let me. I hope we're all doing okay. So far, I hope that I'm making sense. Can you give me a thumbs up sign if so far you're getting good information, or I'm probably triggering some questions from you regarding the entire topic. No, so give me a thumbs up sign lang, just for me to check whether you're still with me. No, ayan. Or if you're getting good information. Oh, okay. So yeah, probably if there are questions that you might have, we will reserve them later on. No, by the way, no. So I will try to accommodate some questions later, no, for purposes of our because I have a limited time for discussion. So later I'll be taking on some questions coming from our participants. Okay, so thank you, no, for that quick reaction from our participants. Now, since we now know the 6 phases that we are talking about in terms of talent acquisition, this time, let's try to see how can we actually create a talent acquisition strategy. Okay? And when you start creating your talent acquisition strategy, the starting point are actually questions. Okay? So, if you'd want to create a talent acquisition strategy, the following questions are fundamental for trying to establish your strategy. Okay? The first question that we need to ask ourselves is, which parts of all talent acquisitions activities are critical to the competitive advantage of your company and its long-term success? Okay, so think about the phases that I've mentioned with regards to the talent acquisition activities, right? So I've discussed that in earlier in my presentation, and we need to ask ourselves, what is really important for me, okay? Or what is really important for the company? So that's the first question, no? Especially the long-term success. Second question is, what are the major challenges in your talent acquisition, and how does your company allocate resources to this? Okay, so you need to also look at internally, what are the challenges that you're encountering, and how does the company provide resources to meet these challenges. Okay, so that's the second question. Third question is related to the given challenges that you have identified. What would be now your key approaches in talent acquisition? Okay, and finally, how will those key approaches align to your organization, particularly with your internal culture and the context of the organization? So, what do I mean by that? No? Sometimes in organizations, it is not easily understood that you're trying to establish talent acquisition. No? What I mean by that is, somehow there are some culture that are very closely knitted, no? That their perception of hiring people is the same with building talents in the company. Okay? So you need to be able to first establish some groundwork with regards to your company. No? So looking at the entire internal culture of your organization or your company, and what is the organizational setup, no, that you are part of. Now, let me offer to you a matrix, no, that you can use to create your talent strategy or talent acquisition strategy. Okay, so let's take a look at this particular diagram. No, so in the diagram, as you can see, we have here, no, two aspects, no, talent availability and then strategic relevance. Okay, so in this matrix, you can see, no, looking at the demand of positions, no. So the first thing that you need to do if you are to create a talent acquisition strategy is look, consider the next 3 to 5 years strategy of your company, and what are the future demands relating to talent or relating to people. Okay? Now, in this case, when you map out the talent availability and the strategic relevance, no, you can consider certain positions, whether it is small or big. Okay? So, in terms of the demand of certain positions, you need to be aware and classify certain positions as being in demand or positions that have a strategic relevance, and what are immediate, things that are needed right now. Okay, so again, when you're creating your talent acquisition strategy, always have the short term and also the long term strategy or thinking in mind. Okay, there are things that are short term that has to be filled up, but also there are certain positions that are big in demand, but it is in the long term. Now, when we consider the demands itself, no, what will happen is, if there's a small demand, no, then we can see whether it is there a low or high talent availability. No? So in some cases, probably some positions might be having, there are available talents that could easily be attracted to the organization. So that's well and good, no? Because that could make your hiring process efficient, right? But obviously, there's an elephant in the room. No, there are positions that are hard to fill in. Might be because of the specialization, might be because of the volume of people that you need, for example. So you need to consider both the small and the big demands. Okay? So whenever there is a big demand, for example, that means that you need to consider the future term. Okay? So all of this, for example, what you can do is look at the different positions that you have currently in the company and then try to plot them using this particular matrix. Now, when you distinguish your different demands, no, then we can identify looking at what we call the different strategy. So let me offer to you the 4 types of talent acquisition strategy that you can consider. Okay, number 1, there are positions that could be considered addressed by simple hiring. Okay? So, when I say simple hiring, the strategic relevance is low, meaning that it might be a position that has been vacated, there's a turnover for it, but the talent availability is high. So what do you do? Just consider simple hiring. Okay? So that's one. The second is, what about positions that require specialization? Okay? So specialization would mean, no, that talent availability might be low, strategic relevance might actually be not so high. Okay? But again, it is needed. So it might be a small demand. So you need to come up with that strategy. So the first strategy that you can create is for simple hiring. The second, for specialist hiring. Okay. The third, how about positions that are difficult because you need to hire them on a volume, mass hiring in that case. Okay. So the talent availability might be low for such positions, but the relevance might be high. Okay. So again, that's the third type of hiring scenario that you might have. No. And of course, another possible scenario for you is you might have, a position that is considered a strategic hire. So when I say strategic hire, the strategic relevance for that position is very high. But again, the talent availability, might be low. Okay, so again, we need to be able to consider. So when you put this all together, consider the 4 things. The positions that are for simple hiring, so immediately you can fill them up. Specialist hiring, those are positions that you need some time to be able to build a strategy for looking for that person or type of profile. If you are facing difficult mass hiring, that's also another area that you need to come up with a strategy. Another is the strategic hire, where you need to consider the long term, meaning that the talent might not be available right now, but you need to establish good relationships with your network and community. Okay? So in short, for you to come up with a talent acquisition strategy, here is a matrix that you can prepare. So what can you do here? So let me explain here. So let's start with the general requirements that you have. So probably the following. Those in the topmost column are the different strategies that you can have. You have job ads, active sourcing, executive search, talent community, etc. So all of this would require you to identify where should I focus on. Now, if again you have a very big demand for this one, so you need to be able to have a very supportive job ads, making sure that the company supports you, and you need to scale up and be more effective. Now, for job specific, then you need to consider looking at whether you're considering not just job ads, but also executive search. That's why if you notice, if you create a strategy, you have to match what type of recruiting requirement do you need and what would be your priority. Okay? So it's very important for us to take things. So the 4 things that I've mentioned earlier are ways for us to determine. So number 1, as I've said, look at positions that are for simple hiring. Second is look for positions that require specialization. And third is what are positions that might be for mass hiring. and that might be difficult, especially in terms of bringing in. So you might want to consider partnering with a third party, no? And strategic hiring, no? Strategic hiring might consider using executive search in that case, no? So all of these are part of your talent acquisition strategy. Okay? So I will end here first. I think no for I think we're good for our break, no? So let me turn over the floor to Kate for our short morning break.
Thank you so much, Sir Ronnie. Good morning again, everyone. So I hope we're all doing well already. Now we're going on our break, and I have mentioned that I'll be doing something this morning with all of you. Okay? Now, Arriva is in the mood to give away prizes to lucky participants. We'll have 2 lucky participants that will receive 200 pesos that will go straight to your GCash account. So I hope you guys are ready. This is our game. It's called Guess the Movie. So this is how the game goes. We'll be showing short clips or short trailers of a certain movie. Now what you have to do, you have to be the first one to type the complete and correct title of that movie here in the chat box. Okay? Again, it should be the complete and correct title. Now for you guys to get the feel of the game, let's do a trial run. We'll do a sample, and then I want you to try guessing the title of this movie already.
Every day, Frodo moves closer to Mordor. How do we know Frodo is alive? What does your heart tell you?
Come, Master. Come to Smeagol.
This is your test. Every path you have trod through wilderness, through war.
Wow, I'm seeing a lot of answers already. Let me check. Let me just go back here in the chat box. The Lord of the Rings. One moment. Lord of the Ring. The Hobbit. Lord of the Rings. What else? Lord of the Kings. The Lord of the Rings, Two Towers. Let's reveal what's the title of that movie. It is The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Okay. Again, I'll remind everyone, you should be typing the complete and correct title of the movie here in the chat box. Okay? So you have to be very fast and it should be complete. So it says here, The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Most of you just typed Lord of the Rings. Some of you typed The Lord of the Rings. One typed Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. There were missing words. So it should be complete and correct. Okay, now you guys know how the game goes. Let us watch the next clip. It will give you 200 pesos.
Do not let go of my hand.
Wow, a lot of answers that we're having a hard time catching up here in the chat box, but most of you wrote Titanic. Do we have a winner? Let's reveal the title. It is, yes, Titanic. I think most of us have seen that movie, so you're very familiar with that. And the first one who was able to type it, she really is very fast. Her name is Charmaine Cerdito. Charmaine, congratulations. You are our first winner. Charmaine, this is what you have to do. Please send your GCash account number to Arriva Academy Philippines here in the chat box, okay? Arriva Academy Philippines. Please send it to us privately. Don't send it to everyone, okay? And then wait for your prize. That will be sent to your GCash account in a little while. And Charmaine, because you've won already, you won't be able to join the game anymore, okay? So that will have, the other participants will have a chance in getting the last 200 pesos that we are giving away. But congratulations again, Charmaine. Now, to the rest of our participants, one more 200 pesos is at stake. It might be yours. Let's watch this.
He's found us, and he's coming!
I am the knowledge and strength of 10,000 worlds. I am flesh and machine. I am becoming everything.
Now that's a proper introduction.
Do you think he's coming back?
This is my world.
Okay, wow, a lot of answers here. Let me just go back. Avengers, Interstellar, Transformers, Avengers Endgame, Avengers Age of Ultron. Let me check. The Avengers. What are the other answers? Okay, there was a typo there. Transstellar, Batman. What else? Let me see. Superman, Batman v Superman. Superman. Okay. Batman versus Superman. Okay, very, very fast. I'm trying. Let us reveal what is the title of that movie. It is Man of Steel. Okay, I will need help from my technical team. Can you chat me? Who was the first one who was able to type it correctly? Okay, we have a winner. We have a winner. We have Jonaline Kasidsid. Congratulations, Jonaline. You are our last winner. You will also receive 200 pesos from Arriva Academy. Jonaline, just like Charmaine, please send your GCash account number to Arriva Academy Philippines here in the chat box, okay? We'll be waiting for your GCash account number. Congratulations, Charmaine and Jonaline. Reason to celebrate because you will receive 200 pesos. We have another reason to celebrate this morning because one of our participants is celebrating also a very special day today. So we would like to greet Rosel Vergara. Rosel, where are you? Congrats. Happy birthday, Rosel. Thank you for being with us. You chose to spend your birthday learning with us. Happy birthday, Rosel. Thank you for spending your birthday with us. Enjoy the rest of your day. Now I'll be moving on with my other announcements. I'm seeing a lot of greetings for our birthday girl here in the chat box. Okay. Stay on top of our insights and updates. Stay connected with Arriva Academy. You can visit us on social media. You can join Arriva Academy's Facebook group. You can also like Arriva Academy's Facebook page, follow Arriva Academy in LinkedIn, and visit our website, www.arriva.com.ph. And I'd like to invite everyone to be a part of the Arriva Academy Viber community. It's a growing community, so you can join us there. You can scan the QR code or type in the number, and we're excited to see you there. For those of you who might have missed the free live webinars that we've had starting 2020, you can all catch them in our YouTube channels, Arriva Academy and Arriva Thoughts. So you can subscribe to those channels and rewatch them. I also would like to invite you to some of our upcoming learning events. Here are some of them. Tomorrow, we are having another free live webinar, and this time we have two international speakers with us tomorrow. The topic is using the ISO 56002 Innovation Management System. Again, this will be for tomorrow already. So call us if you're interested in joining that free live webinar. We have on October 13th, Professional Business Writing Essentials. Sharpen your business writing skills today. We have our 7th Small Claims Court for Debt Collection and Dispute, winning your debt collection through the Small Claims Court on October 19. Strategy Management, develop strong leadership skills and business acumen on October 20. On October 21, we have the 12th Accounting for Non-Accountants. Psychological safety in the workplace. That is our topic for the next free live webinar on October 25. Effective workplace discipline, the management prerogative of line managers and supervisors. This will be on October 26. On October 27, strategic thinking, analysis, and business sales execution. And I'm inviting everyone to join us on the People and Labor Relations Forum 2022. The theme for this year is Proactive Labor and Employee Relations in a Hybrid Work Environment. So for the 2 days that we're having on October 28 and October 29, we have invited a lot of speakers. Again, season 1 will happen on October 28 and season 2 on October 29. So we're looking forward to having you on the People and Labor Relations Forum 2022. Another free live webinar will happen, and this time it will be on November 4, Strategic Workforce Planning in a Post-COVID World. Really interesting topic. Again, that is on November 4 already. On November 8, actionable employee retention strategies for keeping your best talent. I'm sure you will all find this very interesting. Again, this will be on November 8 already, so please take note of those dates. Register as early as now. And the 10th Essentials of Effective Logistic Operations and Warehouse Management on November 11. November 17, Production Planning, Managing Inventory and Stock Control Operations. November 25, How to Handle Hazardous Materials Safely and Prevent Warehouse Incidents. And for those of you interested in inviting our speakers to conduct a program exclusive for your team or for your company, ARIVA Academy can help you with your in-house training needs, whether they be virtual or face-to-face. So just give us a call or send us an email and let us know what topic you have in mind. Here are some of the programs that we offer, but we have a lot more than that. So just give us a call and we'll help you partner with the right speaker under ARIVA Academy Speakers Bureau for that. There you have it. Now we still have a lot to discuss this morning. So I am giving the floor back to our speaker, Sir Ronnie Turla. Hi, Sir Ronnie.
Hi. Okay, thank you, Kate, for those announcements. So let me continue my discussion as we do the second stretch of our learning session for this morning. Okay, so just to recap what we have discussed for the first part, we have talked about the difference between recruitment and selection, recruitment and talent acquisition. We've also looked at the different phases with regards to our talent acquisition. So one of the things that we have to remember is that employer branding is the starting point of talent acquisition, and that sourcing or recruitment is an activity that is under talent acquisition. Okay, so that's something that for us to remember. And of course, before the break, we were also discussing what are the different demands that you have. So I've mentioned how you can create your strategy for 4 different types of demands that you have right now in the organization. So just to, again, enumerate some of them. Again, you have to have a strategy, a talent acquisition strategy for simple hiring. So that means that these are positions that are easily filled up. because the talents are available. No. Second is you need to also come up with a strategy for hiring for specialist positions that require specialization, a certain degree or a certain path, no, that they need to take. So you need to come up with a strategy for that. No? Third is you need to also look at the difficult mass hiring. So positions that require you to be able to hire volume of number of people in a specific number of time. No? So you need to consider that as part of your talent acquisition strategy. Because remember, when you hire those personnel, the starting point is the hiring process, but it doesn't end there. No? You have to make sure that they're productive, that they're able to contribute to the organizational success. But at the same time, these people that you're hiring could also be the source of your potential talents. No? That's why you don't just look at them on the short term. No? You also need to look at the long term of what you're trying to hire. No? And of course, last thing that you need to consider is strategic hiring. No? So there are positions that are very strategic, might not be needed in the immediate, in the next 6 months or so, but looking at it as a strategic hire, that means that you need to build on relationship. No? The talent availability is something that might not be available right now. Okay, so those are the things that we have discussed so far as the talent acquisition strategy is concerned. Ayan. Okay, so now let's talk about this time building really an integrated talent acquisition strategy. No? But before I do that also, let me just also mention or at least define to us what do we mean by talent. No? So let me share.
Sir Ronnie, okay, there.
There. Okay.
I was about to say that we're not seeing the screen yet.
Yeah. There. So now let's talk about how we should define talent. Okay. So talent here would be defined as what consists of those individuals who can make a difference to the organizational performance. No? Either through their immediate contribution or in the longer term by demonstrating the highest level of potential. No? That's why if you're talking about talent management, okay, the talent there can be defined, no? According to McKinsey, who is a global consulting organization, talent is the sum total of a person's abilities, their intrinsic gifts, skills, knowledge, experience, no, intelligence, judgment, character, no, his or her ability to learn and grow. No? So again, when you talk about talent here, no, we're talking about the holistic aspect of looking at talent. No? So talent is an important thing for us to consider since we're talking about talent acquisition strategy. So people that we hire in the company will either contribute on the short term, but also some of the talents that we're hiring can actually be tapped to perform on the long term, no? And that is where the level of potential should be highlighted, and that is one of the concerns of the talent acquisition strategy. Now, let me now talk to you about how we can build exactly what we're talking about, the talent acquisition strategy. No? So far, we've identified the four possible demands of your recruiting needs, no? Or sourcing needs. This time, let's talk about what are the different ways, no, that we can focus on the talent acquisition strategy. Okay, let's start off with asking ourselves also, when we talk about the talent acquisition strategy, these are some of your typical concerns, right? Probably not enough applicants. The requirements doesn't exist at this point. Salary is not competitive. No? There's not enough time. Okay, so these are typical concerns, no, that you might have. No? So now, the question here, when you talk about talent acquisition, what is HR or the staffing manager to do? No? So that is again upon us. So if you're in HR, if you're the one responsible for staffing, no, then you're supposed to take care, no, of those particular demands. No? Now, let me present to you the 9 components of a talent acquisition strategy. No? And we will try to discuss what are the different components so that you can build your talent acquisition strategy. Okay, so here are the 9 talent acquisition strategy that you can focus on. No? So the 9 strategies here are grouped into 3 3 major classification. You have staffing function, the HR processes, and the HR partners. Okay, so let's try to discuss each one of them, starting with um, the staffing function. No? So for the staffing function, we have to remember if we would want to build a talent acquisition strategy, we need to start with um, the workforce planning. Okay? So for workforce planning, we need to see that our headcount should be confirmed at least 6 months in advance. Okay? So that means if there are positions that are to be hired, there has to be a lead time for us to plan for the kind of talents that we would need. No? Also, part of workforce planning is that we need to set the skill levels have to be finalized. We also need to agree for the sourcing strategy that we're going to apply with regards to getting those talents. No, we might also want to look at the market in terms of what is in demand. What are the current employment trends, no, that is affecting our staffing needs. No, so workforce planning is an important element for the talent acquisition strategy. It helps you prepare the kind of talents that you will be needing for the long term. Okay, so that's the first part of the talent acquisition strategy. The second part under the staffing function would be your employer branding. So for employer branding, what it requires for you to do is to have a corporate website put into place. It should be something very relevant right now. Okay. You might also want to consider external job boards, no, that are present nowadays. Okay, so you need to put in. No? So be careful into what you're posting in job boards because, as they say, garbage in, garbage out. So meaning you need to target certain talents, no, and there has to be some sort of good copy. No, when I say good copy, you're supposed to come up with something attractive for the possible target market. Okay. Another part of employer branding is campus relations. So as our organization, I would definitely encourage you to keep good contacts with your universities, colleges, or schools. No? So that's part of employer branding. No? Whenever people apply from those universities and colleges, that would again improve your employer branding. And of course, social media. No? So again, for social media, you need to consider the different platforms, no, and not just using the platforms itself, but more so, how do you differentiate yourself, no? Because at the end of the day, when you talk about brand, no, brand is something that people recall based on what you put up, no, in your social media. Okay, so people remember you because of what you're putting in. No? So I see that a lot. For example, if you go to LinkedIn, a lot of big companies are trying to really focus on the employee experience. No? So nowadays, the important thing that you need to highlight with your employer branding is the employee experience. Okay, so the employee experience is something that really, it's something authentic from your employees as a come on for potential applicants. Okay, so coming up, for example, with success stories, for example, for your employees are, proven methods of, coming up with employer branding. No? So things like sharing stories from your successful employees will help you eventually improve your talent acquisition, because the more that you're able to create success stories of your new hires, for example, then they're able to see that you are a possible good employer to join. No? So that's an important aspect. At the bottom line of employer branding is, would I want to be employed, no, and be part of this organization? So those are all part of your employer branding. Okay, so that's the second strategy that you can focus on with regards to your staffing function. Okay, so that's a second strategy. The third strategy, of course, is for us to consider doing competency-based selection. Okay? The advantage of doing competency-based selection with regards to your talent acquisition is that you focus more on not just the qualifications, no? Because recruiting tends to focus more on the qualifications of that person versus the job requirement. Okay? So, in terms of competency-based selection, you're trying to identify not just the skills, no, but the combination of abilities, no, aptitude of that person. That will comprise competency. No? So, if you're looking for a certain position, you need to define what competencies will make that person successful. Okay? Qualifications as part of recruiting would normally tell you if this person could be suitable for a certain position. But when you talk about competencies, you're not just talking about the person being suitable, but more so the person becoming, having that potential of not just fulfilling the current role, but more so a long-term role. Okay? So you need to see a person when you hire them with their potential, no, and with your talent management process, no, tapping into that potential and that person becoming a success story for your company. No? Another important strategy that you need to consider for recruitment and selection is that all members of your interview team are trained properly. Okay? So, the level of training that is required for the recruitment team, it's something that you need to focus on if you would want to achieve efficiency in your recruitment and selection. No, as part of staffing function, we have to be aware of the process. No, earlier I showed you the hiring funnel. No, and in this case, people have to be trained. So recruiting is not just a simple job to fill in, although it might be very attractive as a fresh graduate to join the company as a recruitment team, no? But we have to make sure that we have the proper training for our recruitment team. Okay, so that's the third strategy under the staffing function. Okay, now the next part of our strategy here would be our HR processes. Okay? So the HR processes that are indicated as part of your talent acquisition includes the following, no? Onboarding and the new employee experience, performance management, and then talent management. So let's go into the detail of the strategy for the HR processes. Okay. For the onboarding and the new employee experience, you might want to assign mentors for employees who are joining you for the first time. Okay, so assigning mentors is a proven way that you can actually grow certain people from who they are right now to what they can potentially be in the future. No? So you need to look at people and categorize them according to what they're capable of. Okay? So assigning mentors is a developmental part, of making sure that whatever potential certain employees have, especially the ones that you're hiring, no, can be tapped in the future. Okay. Also, another part of your onboarding and new employee experience is your year-long onboarding program. Okay? So again, let me differentiate onboarding versus orientation. For a lot of us, especially if we're in HR, we tend to look at orientation and onboarding in the same manner, no? But in actuality, it is different. Okay? Now, again, earlier I differentiated recruitment from talent acquisition, no? Now, onboarding is different from an orientation in that sense that onboarding enables the person to socialize in an organization in this aspect of being able to adapt, no, to the culture of the organization, no, be able to connect and have good relationships with people inside the organization, no? So that's onboarding. That's why onboarding is not a 1 week or a 3 day program, no? So onboarding means that the person feels, no, that he or she belongs to the organization. Okay, and in that manner, that will require you to get feedback, no, and ask for the experience of that person, no, let's say in a matter of 6 months or a matter of 1 year, no. So again, a proven way of doing and evaluating onboarding is to check on them periodically. For example, let's start from the first 30 days, the first 60 days, the first 90 days, the first 1 year, for example. So creating milestones for employees who are being hired in the company is a good way for you as a talent acquisition, because when you try to put milestones into your employee experience, no, then you're trying to tell them that they really matter to the company, that you take notice that they have grown with the company, and you're checking whether are they in good relationship with their colleagues, with their superiors, for example. So that's what we mean by onboarding. Compared with orientation, orientation is simply telling that person what the company is all about and what are certain information they can use, no, to be able to adapt and be productive in the company. Okay, so that's why in orientation you give out the company profile, the history of the company, the organizational structure, etc., etc. Okay, so but orientation only provides you with that enough information so that the person can be productive, no, for the first 30 days or first 60 days, no. Onboarding is a longer term process, and that onboarding process could actually be your basis for your success stories for your employees. Ayan. Okay, so that's the difference between orientation and onboarding. Now, another thing that you need to consider is to focus on improving integration experience. Okay? So that means that in the onboarding process, as part of talent acquisition, you need to make sure that the person that you've hired is able to integrate in the company, no, and is able to contribute. Okay, within the first year, for example, no, it would be good for you to actually, have the person have milestones. This is my first year. This is my 12 month, etc. No? So I see that, for example, if you look at LinkedIn, for example, there are certain people who actually put milestones into what they're doing. So that's actually a good way, no, to promote the company. So you can actually encourage your employee to promote good things, no, that they're experiencing, more than just focusing on the rants or the complaints that they have with the company. Maybe, again, try to encourage people to post good things that they are actually experiencing in the company. So that's the fourth strategy as part of talent acquisition. What is the fifth? The fifth strategy is performance management. Okay? So performance management would mean performance is, the deliverables with the employee or manager are being monitored. Okay? So performance management is a system that is driven by your department heads, your line managers, for example. So they need to make sure that goals that are set, no, are actually identified as part of your performance management. Okay, so of course, performance management includes the performance review, the planning of the performance, the monitoring, and as well as the reward aspect. Okay, so performance management is an important aspect, no, because if you look at articles telling us what would make people retain or stay in organization, you would see that employees are wanting a sense of progress. No, they would want to know how are they progressing from the organization. So that's an important thing to consider as part of your talent acquisition. That you're able to show the person or the employee what is the progress of that person. No, and in essence, when you look at performance management, no, the ultimate purpose of why performance management is essential for a company is that you can see that there's improved performance of your employees. Okay? I always tell participants that the bottom line of doing performance evaluation, no, is to be able to compare that person a year before and what did the person achieve for this year. No? So when you're able to compare the two and see that there is marked improvement, then that means performance management worked for that employee. Because that means that person became better than who or he or than how he was before the evaluation happened. Okay? Now, one one thing that you need to consider when it comes to the talent acquisition strategy is to come up with a development plan. Okay? Remember, part of managing performance, no, is identifying people who have a possible potential to become a leader. No? Probably not right now, but you're trying to develop that person. So part of performance management is to come up with the development plan. And that has to be agreed upon by the manager and the employee. Okay? So that is the fifth strategy for talent acquisition, to focus on performance management. Okay. The sixth strategy here that I've included is talent management. Okay? So talent management would include career planning with your employees. No? Nowadays, when it comes to performance evaluation, it's not just all about the ratings or the scores. No, there's what we call performance conversations. Performance conversations tries to center on what are the career prospects of this employee. So during appraisals or evaluation with your new employees or even your regular employee, try to include discussions about what could be potential careers that I can take on. Not just in my present job, no, but somehow, no, there has to be that kind of conversation. Okay? Another thing to consider as part of talent management are job rotation assignment. No? Job rotation is a very good way of developing employees. When I say job rotation, that means that you're trying to make the person that you've hired, no, multifaceted, so that the person is not stuck in one position alone. Okay? So job rotation would mean doing cross-training. So let's say, for example, if I am, let's say in HR, I would want probably to experience being in operations, being in marketing, being in finance, for example, for some reason. So in that case, job rotation can be done as part of your talent management. Focused on people who have the potential to become a leader or a manager in the future. Okay? So job rotation assignments are, again, proven way of doing talent management. No? And of course, you can also consider succession planning. Okay? So succession planning would include that you're able to ensure that those who have high potential are retained in the company and are groomed to become really the future leader. Okay? So succession planning is an important aspect when it comes to talent management. Because as we said, succession planning enables the company to be prepared in the event that talents are needed, or if there are opportunities, no, that we can elevate certain staff or certain employees to higher positions. No? So remember, in companies right now, it's not just about the vertical movements, but there could also be horizontal movements. Okay? So not everything is about going up. Sometimes movements could be within the level, no, that the person is. Sometimes there are things that I still need to learn. Okay? So in this aspect, that is what you should look into in terms of talent management. So again, these are the HR processes that you need to focus on as part of your talent acquisition strategy. Okay. Finally, we also need to consider HR partners. Okay, so that is the last part of the the 9 talent acquisition strategy. No, okay. So when regards to HR partners in the organization, we need to consider the following things. Okay, if you have HR business partners in the company, there has to be an ongoing dialogue with employees who are hired, no, and that were identified as having potential. No? Also, it's important also for us to consider advanced information on terminations. Okay? What do I mean by that? No? Because obviously, as part of workforce planning, as I mentioned earlier, we need to also be aware if some people will be choosing to leave, no, or will be terminated, no, because that will affect, no, the talent acquisition process. No? And also, HR business partners have to have a unified voice to the business unit. Okay, so if you're operating on an HR business partnership, um, no, that having one voice or having one language with the business unit heads, for example, is important, because if you don't have a unified voice, for example, I think there's no partnership existing in the first place if there's no common voice. No? So again, the HR business partnership is important for us to consider as part of our talent acquisition. Okay. The next strategy that I'd like to focus on is compensation. So compensation here includes collecting the proper salary and benefits information. So that means we have to make sure that we constantly benchmark our salaries and benefits. No, I would always recommend that we benchmark our salaries at least every 3 years. Although because of the pandemic, somehow it will require us to be more, probably to have more frequent benchmarking, given the disruption that we've encountered. Also, we have to provide input to compensation. Okay? We need to make sure that we are involved in terms of creating the compensation program or compensation strategy of the company. Because remember, talent acquisition also hinges on attractive compensation. No? So people would, of course, consider being part of a company that has a very competitive compensation package being offered to them. Okay, so for them not to consider other employers that they can choose from. Also, another thing to consider with compensation is to look at trends and not just a single hire. Okay, what I mean by that is we need to consider when we're paying our employees, no, that we need to have that kind of consideration for equity. So equity could mean different things. No? There are 3 different types of equity. One is what they call internal equity. No? Internal equity means that employee salary based on their positions are comparable. Okay? Or there's not much conflict or overlapping. Okay? That's internal equity. External equity concerns you whether your salaries, your internal salaries, are competitive with the external market. Okay? So that's external equity. So that's why the way for us to consider that is to do benchmarking. Okay? The third type of equity is employee equity. So employee equity here talks about how salaries are progressing in the company. Okay? Number 2 is, do we emphasize on the seniority of the person for the position? And of course, we have to also consider, do we have proper guidelines as to how salaries would be increasing or progressing in the company? Okay? Do we have the appropriate salary structure no, that we can offer to our employees, no, both current and also those who are coming in, no, because remember, managing compensation centers on two things, no, attracting possible applicants and of course retaining, no, our current employees inside the organization. So those are the two important aspects when we're managing compensation. And finally, the third, no, component in terms of the HR partners would be training and development. Okay? So as part of our talent acquisition strategy, we need to understand what are the talent gaps that we have in the company. Okay? So this could be done through probably a needs assessment. We need to be able to see what skill set is missing in the organization. No? And then, of course, we try to hire people to minimize those gaps, no, by inviting talents to go into a certain organization. No? And I've seen this happen in my experience in a company where we needed some people to really provide some kind of analysis for a certain function in the company, and we needed really fresh talents. And because of that, we really had to profile what kind of people are we looking for. Okay? And when we're able to do that and minimize the gap, no, that is needed in the company, then we're able to have, or at least present a good talent acquisition strategy for the company. No? And finally, another thing to consider here is to partner with the training and development group, no, to close that gap. So if we're in talent acquisition, we need to also partner with our training and development group in the company. No? And the thing with that is we need to make sure that whatever gaps we observe with the people or candidates that we are hiring in the company, that we're able to close that gap in the most efficient time that we have. Okay, so these are again on the aspect of HR partnership. So again, these are the strategies, no, that we need to remember. So again, for staffing function, we have the workforce planning, employer branding, no, recruitment and selection. For HR processes, we need to look at the onboarding and the new employee experience. Also consider our performance management as well as our talent management. Of course, for HR partners, we need to consider the HR business partners, look at the compensation aspect, no? And of course, work with our training and development partners in the company. So these are the 9 components of how you can build your talent acquisition strategy. No? So that's why if you look at it, as I've said earlier at the start of my presentation, it will not only require you to focus on one aspect, but it will consider you what would be your long-term perspective about talent acquisition. Okay? So those are, again, the 9 strategies that you can apply with regards to talent acquisition. Okay, so let me wrap up my discussion for this morning with a case study. No? So I'll be sharing the case study here as to the best practice in talent acquisition. So I'm highlighting the company Accenture for this particular case study example. So this is where we can see how theory then is applied to on practical terms. No? Okay, so let's look at the summary of the case study itself. Okay, so the background of the case tells us in 2013, Accenture ventured or embarked on a major change program that changed their structure and also how they deal with their clients. No? So this means that it needed to recruit for roles that hadn't existed before. Okay, so does this sound familiar to you in this case? No, so there are cases where certain positions are not yet existing, but in this case, we have to be able to come up with a strategy on how we can be able to recruit such people. Okay, so in their case, they were in need for big data consultants during that time. Remember, it was 2013. Again, the approach is to beat the competitors for digital talent. Okay, so that is the background of the case. That is the starting point of where Accenture was during that time. No? Now, let's look at what the from that background, what did the company do? So these are the things that they did, no, as per documentation. No? So first, they tried to invite prospective candidates into the organization to see the technologies and solutions they were working on. Okay, they tried to create a fully interactive room in which attendees could interact with demos using iPads, Xbox controllers, and other tools. Okay, they run again a 30-minute demo in their innovation center. Okay, and then they tried to use Google Hangouts on key industry topics so people could talk to Accenture professionals in a more dynamic way rather than just using Facebook and Twitter. Okay, so that's something that they tried to do. No, now the recruitment team also built their social media profiles using LinkedIn to attract talent and making the business more visible. Okay? So this for me, is one of the things that you can try to look into. No? How is your LinkedIn profile looking at right now? Is it attractive to your potential talents? No? Or do you require that the profile will be able to be attractive to prospective candidates in the future? Okay, so be careful with how you're creating the profile of your social media platforms. Okay, so that is what Accenture did. So they try to build a good social media profile using LinkedIn to attract talents, because when you do that, you will definitely be able to tap into potential candidates who are not necessarily available immediately, but they would have a very good idea of what the company is all about. Okay, so they have also introduced a customer relationship management tool that enable them to keep track of where the person is potentially considering. So if you have potential talents that you're considering, you need to also track what are their considerations for their prospective employer. Okay? So by looking at what they're considering for their prospective employer, then you can match that to your particular company culture or company requirements. Now, again, as a result, as part of this case study, if you look at it, videos of Google Hangouts have attracted more than 3,500 views. So that was quite, impressive in that case. They were able to hire 42 of the 400 people who attended the events, representing again a higher ratio than the CV to hire model. Okay, social media training has contributed to 100% uplift in the application, LinkedIn application in some areas. Okay, and then they also had a better conversion rates. 1 in every 6 candidates were hired. Okay, and they were able to achieve more than double the number of hires compared to their previous year. Okay, so this is an actual example of where a case that when the talent acquisition strategy is applied using measurements and numbers, you can definitely see how a talent acquisition will be applied and become effective for your company. So remember, when you are trying to come up with your talent acquisition strategy, you need to consider the things that I've mentioned earlier. Look at the questions, create the background for your company of what you're trying to build as your talent acquisition. Don't forget to use measurements such as metrics, the time to hire, the number of people applying for your positions. These are important numbers to look at so that you can improve your talent acquisition. Of course, you need to also consider improving your different HR processes in the company. Okay, that is part and parcel of your talent acquisition, because otherwise, you may be able to hire them, but if there is no system of evaluating performance, there is no way for them to be trained or to be developed to become future leaders of the company, definitely your talent acquisition strategy will fail. Okay? So all of this we need to consider as part of building, an effective talent acquisition strategy. Okay? So at this point, no, as I wrap up my discussion for this morning, I hope I was able to enlighten you on what you need to be able to develop and create an effective talent acquisition strategy. Okay, so at this point in time, I will allot, the remaining time that we have for questions, clarifications that you might have, or any suggestions that you might want to also share. No, but there might be some participants here who was able to, of course, already implement good talent acquisition strategies. No? So we're definitely open to hear coming from any participants. No? So let me turn to Kate for us to facilitate our Q&A at this point of the session.
Thank you so much, Sir Ronnie. Okay, so now we're open to questions. For those of you who'd like to ask a question, click the raise hand button. You can ask your question directly to our speaker or type your questions here in the chat box. But Sir Ronnie, I have a few questions here already. Is it okay if I read them already?
Yes, go ahead.
We have a lot of interesting questions. Here's the first one. Sir Ronnie, what are the list? Can you give us a list of search engine that can get candidates?
Okay. Well, definitely. I mean, on top of my mind, of course, would be um, search engines such as Indeed. No, would still be relevant right now. JobStreet is still definitely one of the things that you can consider. LinkedIn, of course, definitely still a good site or community to look into. Others would be more, I think, localized. No, and of course. Um, Based on what I've known, social media are still, your Facebook, your Instagram, for example, are still good ways of trying to search for people.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Here's another question, another interesting question. Sir Ronnie, what is talent acquisition going to look like in 2023?
Okay. I would say for talent acquisition would be more dynamic. I would say, although we have challenges because of the conflict of the working situation. Because I've seen some research studies done internationally. One of the things that potential applicants are considering would be the working arrangements, of potential applicants applying for companies. So I think that's something that has to be still dealt with at this point. Probably it will take us about 1 or 2 more years for us to have some normalization for talent acquisition, especially with how I've presented it. No? So probably it will take about a few more years, for us to have a more stable talent acquisition.
Okay, thank you for that. The next one. What are the strategies that we can use to attract talent who prefer to work on a hybrid setup?
Okay. Well, I think no. When you hire potential applicants, for example, you need to really study the jobs itself and also the working environment. No, I've always believed that the remote setup is not the first time na ginawa natin. No, remote setup was not the first time that happened during pandemic. Uh, you know, Even before the pandemic, there were already employees who are using remote work. No? Now, the thing to consider there is to come up with a setup and have an agreement of having that hybrid setup wherein we're able to really maximize, the presence of the employee on a face-to-face basis, and at the same time maximizing their work from home or remote setup. No? So I do believe kasi that somehow there are really positions that definitely having remote setup could be a very minimal possibility, no? But of course, for some positions, you might want to really consider having that kind of available working arrangement na may remote, and then there are days, for example, that the people will be there. For example, I've been hearing that typical companies would have a three day let's say hybrid, and then 2 days remote, for example. So that could be a good working arrangement for a company, for example. So again, it depends on the requirement of your company for different positions. So that's why my suggestion is for you to really study the jobs or positions that you have in the company, and which one would require what kind of setup or working arrangements, and that you can try to experiment or implement in your company.
Wow, thank you for that. Here's another interesting question. How to cross-examine an applicant to identify if he or she is hiding something regarding employment background?
Okay. Um, well, I think for one, there is an interviewing technique that can be used, no, just to share. Since I also run interviewing skills workshops, and one of the things that I would normally teach participants is to use what I call the challenger question. Okay, a challenger question is a question that tries to ask for what are the things that you were not successful in your job. Okay, so once you ask that question, you have to use your nonverbal observation, meaning observe whether the person is confident or comfortable talking to you about something that they were not able to deliver or be successful in the job. And that's when you can see if the person is telling you the real story, or probably if there's something behind that story. That's when you actually use background check, no, to double check whether what happened. Because sometimes in the interview, this person will tell, oh, something happened with my boss. Okay? Although, of course, some people will say, I prefer not to talk about it. Okay? So with those terms, for example, I prefer not to talk about it, you might have a hint that something happened. Of course, you don't want to preempt that person, because of course you have to respect that person if the person doesn't want to disclose, no? But as an interviewer, I would normally take note of that, no, and reserve it for the background check, just for me to verify if that person might be telling another side of the story. And based on experiences, I've had experiences where my intuition was correct, meaning that person was not telling the real story, because the real story I discovered during the background check. Yeah, so that's where I was able to validate.
Wow, thank you for that. Okay, another question here. Well, we have a lot of questions. I'm sorry, guys. I think we're down to our last two questions because of time constraint. Here's another question. Is it better to let employees attend third-party companies that provide trainings instead of making and formulating your own trainings?
Okay, that's a good question to ask. No, I would always follow. When it comes to learning and development, I try to follow the 70-20-10 rule. Okay, what do I mean by the 70-20-10? 70% of learning happens on the job. So most of the things that your employees would learn is actually on the job. Okay, only 10%, within the 70-20-10, 10% is the avenue for you to let people attend external trainings. So definitely, I would still recommend that employees, especially with those with high potential, attend trainings, no, of external parties. Because remember, not everything can be provided within or internally. So definitely, consider mo pa rin yun as part of your training strategy, that, for you to be able to provide external. Kasi there are things that you can also not learn inside the company that other people, no, like speakers, trainers, for example, can provide through an external training. So, but again, you just have to balance, no, in terms of your learning and development.
Okay, and we're down to our last question. Here's a question. Aside from offering a higher salary, How will you stop those high-skilled employees from transferring to another company who offered a much better salary than what you're offering?
Well, again, that's a very tough question to contend with, no. And I think as HR, we would always encounter that of course we believe that the grass is always greener at the other side, and for that matter, we can always try to put a best shot in terms of trying to match the salaries of employees, for example. But I've always believed that there are non-tangibles when it comes to the aspect of monetary. Kasi, there's so much that you can just offer for a certain job. Okay? So, try to match the salaries that you can offer to your employees, no? But also try to look at other ways to motivate them, no? Because I've always believed it's not just money which will motivate them. Try to find where they can find inspiration. Probably in employees who have stayed in the company, probably supervisors or managers who are parang enjoying their stay in the company, and let them probably mentor that person, something like that. No, so those are parang non-traditional ways of motivating them aside from money. Yan. Yan. So those are suggestions that I have.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sir Ronnie, for answering all of our questions. As I've mentioned, we still have a lot, but due to time constraint, we won't be able to answer all of them. But really, thank you so much, Sir Ronnie, for being very generous in answering the questions and sharing your expertise with our participants. Because of that, we'd like to present you with this certificate. Let me read this. ARIVA Academy Learning Development at its finest gratefully presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Ronaldo F. Torla for generously sharing his professional expertise, valuable knowledge, and wisdom to the delegates of developing your talent acquisition strategy, innovative talent acquisition strategies to retain top talent. Held on October 5, 2022 via Zoom platform. Signed by Chairman and Chief Strategist, Learning Event Producer J.M. Matienzo, and President and Chief Learning and Development Strategist Michelle Irish Malonda Samson. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our speaker, Mr. Ronnie Turla. Thank you so much, Sir Ronnie. Now, I would like to invite everyone to join us for a group photo with our speaker. So, for those of you whose cameras are still turned off, kindly turn them on so you can be part of this group photo and give us your biggest smiles. And we will be assisted by our technical director, Jeff.
Yes, thank you so much, Miss Kate. Okay, guys, please open your camera before we start for the group picture. Come on, guys, please open. Okay, let's wait for the others. Okay, I think we're good. Guys, show me your beautiful smiles. In my count, 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, one more this time. Let's do a finger heart naman po. Yan. Come on, guys, get ready. And 3, 2, 1, smile. Thank you. Back to you, Miss Kate.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And in behalf of everyone from ARIVA Academy, I'd like to say thank you to all of our participants for being with us on this wonderful Wednesday morning. We're looking forward to welcoming you again in our future learning events. Thank you so much. Maraming salamat. God bless you all. And please, everyone, let's all stay safe. Thank you.
You know what I'm saying?